In this session, we're going to be looking at plot layouts in IRRICAD Link. Now, IRRICAD Link uses inbuilt AutoCAD and BricsCAD methods of viewports into the model space. We have our own IRRICAD paper space layouts because, unlike most AutoCAD and BricsCAD users, our designs are in meters and feet rather than millimeters or inches, and the viewports in our layouts have been created to scale accordingly. I'm just going to draw a pipe. And here we can see that there's two of our layouts here along the bottom, and we can zoom to select the view that we actually want to print. There is a tool in IRRICAD Link which is Prepare Layout. What this does is it finds the closest IRRICAD scale and sets it accordingly. So if we look at the properties, we can see that the closest scale was 1 inch equals 30 foot. We also have the option to lock the display once we've got things exactly how we want, and this means if you accidentally click on it, it's not going to change the scale because you've locked it. Here we can see the scale. Now if I double click on that and go to look at the field expression, you'll see that we have a very particular field expression which our viewport has been set up to. So this is how it scales the way that you're used to IRRICAD scaling designs in standalone. So let's first load a design. We have to go back to model space for that. One of the things that you'll note is that when you prepare layout or populate the legend, is that the legend areas are actually very editable in IRRICAD Link. So here we can see that we've got two columns, but the length of some of those product descriptions are a bit long, and we can simply just double click on this rectangle that makes up the legend and make some changes. We're going to change the text size, for example. Now if we make that a little bit smaller and then repopulate the legend, we can see that we have very quickly and easily changed that text size. Maybe change the number of columns or change the length of the pipe or wire. That can all be done in these attributes. To load additional layouts, simply right-click on an existing layout and select From Template. Now typically your drawing templates that you start with will be the IRRICAD default one. The IRRICAD layout DWT includes the full range of layouts. So for example, if I select the C key bottom right, we can now include this layout in this design. These layouts are available in the normal template location for AutoCAD or BricsCAD, but we'll have a look at that a little bit later. You can permanently add additional layouts to your particular template DWT file that you want to start your designs with, such as the default IRRICAD template. You can add or subtract layouts. To make changes to the standard template, the best way to do this is in the host CAD environment rather than in IRRICAD Link, because it's very important to not IRRICADize the template when you're modifying it. And this is because when you run IRRICAD Link, which of course fires up the host CAD program, it opens the default document before it loads IRRICAD, because IRRICAD is an add-on, so it comes last, meaning that any IRRICAD elements in the template will not be recognized. So if you're getting the message, unload IRRICAD before loading IRRICAD, that will be because you have IRRICADized your template. A quick way to check for that is to check the layers. So if you've got more layers present than just the legend and the viewport, then you have done an IRRICAD action, even if it's only just looking at the settings or the IRRICAD options. As soon as you do that, you'll have IRRICADized the template and you'll see all of the IRRICAD layers present there. So if you save a DWT file in that state, you will have problems. The only command that you can use that won't IRRICADize the template is IRR_create legends. What we're going to look at now is editing the DWT file. Just a note that if you've got BricsCAD and AutoCAD licenses in your company, then edit the templates in AutoCAD, not in BricsCAD. This is simply because AutoCAD knows if it wasn't saved in AutoCAD, it will complain. It will work, but it will complain every time you use it. We're just going to change the file type to DWT, and here we've been taken to, in this case, the normal AutoCAD template location. which is nicely hidden under Users, your login name, App Data, Local, and then through the Autodesk to the template folder. Now if I go to the default template, we can open that. We can say, well, in my particular case, I never use the size D paper, so I'm going to delete that one, and I'm going to add from template the C key right layout, and then we can simply save as always, give it a different file name, and this is just to check, if something goes wrong you can always go back to the default one. However, there are copies of these default DWT files in your installed IRRICAD Link config folder, so I'm going to give it a new name. You can save it anywhere you want, but we have noticed recently someone who had saved their templates on OneDrive that they were getting issues. So whether that was because the logos in the DWT files weren't loading, or there was a little bit of a disconnect there. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so we can save that now. To run plain AutoCAD or plain BricsCAD or plain Civil 3D, if that's what you use, you need to make sure that you set the profile switch in the target. That's because if you don't, then when you try and run these, they will load the last used profile, which in my case is the IRRICAD profile. So I have put in my default BricsCAD profile there, and for my AutoCAD one, it's unnamed profile. Now, of course, if you've made your own one, then you would load that so that the P/space speech marks, the name, and then another speech mark, you can use your IRRICAD Link icon to just check the format. So now if I run this, that will load the pure BricsCAD or AutoCAD profile. And then I know for sure that I'm not going to have any chance of IRRICADizing my template when I'm editing it. What we'll do now is we will look for the templates in the template location. If you're using AutoCAD, you would look in the AutoCAD location, Users, App Data. For all other things like your CUI files, etc., are under roaming, but your templates are under the local folder. And you can blame AutoCAD for this. This is their method of putting everything in these places. I select the template that I made. Just remember that everything you do in here will be saved, so if you change the zoom or you add something, it will be saved in your template. Here we can see that there's some fields. We'll just have a look to see what they are. This one here is the company name. Here we can see that there's a list. If it's looking at all in the field category, just change it to document, because that will shorten the list considerably and you'll be able to find the IRRICAD keywords much easier. If that's the company name one, that's the one I want to remove. For this we're going to be using insert object instead of inserting an image. And the reason for that is when you insert an object is embedded in the template or the drawing rather than simply linking to the image file. So we'll be using insert object, or in AutoCAD, insert OLE object, select create from file. I'm going to browse to my desktop, and it's best to use a BMP image now. One thing I did find yesterday is that if your images are not opening automatically with a program that can be used for editing OLE objects, then you're just going to get a little icon. For example, let me just do the OLE object and the PNG file. You'll just get a little logo like this because the PNG is linked to OpenView on my computer, which is not a suitable OLE server application. So if your logos are coming in like this, change your file associations. This is what I did. I changed my file association for the BMP file to the Windows Paint, which is, as you know, is the one that's automatically installed with your operating system, and then the image will display. Now the other thing that we want to note is that this logo has a boundary on it, which is good for selecting and moving, but it's not something we want to print. So what we want to do is to use our OLE frame command number 2, and that means you can see the frame but it won't print, which is quite helpful. Now we can save as, always save as, and let's go logo. Now if you want to save this layout individually, you can use the layout SA or layout save as, and it will save this layout into its own individual DWT file. So if you wanted to, you could do this with all of your particular layouts, save them to their own files, and then just bring them in when you need them into designs that you're doing. In the webinar about IRRICAD standalone plots, we were looking at the plot template keywords that we could use to pull in the information from the company, client, and design dialogues. So if we go back to IRRICAD Link, we'll be able to see in IRRICAD Options, which is the original settings, that we still have all of those fields and dialogues available for that type of information. So once you've filled this in, it will come through. Back to editing our template. The fields, the keywords, are mtext fields. So when we double click on them, we get the mtext text formatting. As I showed you before, we can select any of these keywords that are available there. This particular one is the design site. We might want to add something about the client, and we can do that as well, and we can change the formatting too. We can use the legend text, for example, change the size, etc. But the way that AutoCAD and BricsCAD do the text is quite different from what you might be used to in IRRICAD Standalone. If you've just made the transition, you'll notice that it is quite a marked difference. AutoCAD and BricsCAD use text styles more than individual properties of each piece of text. And this is so that if you change your text style, it will change all of the pieces of text that use that style. One of the things that you might notice is that when you have a design that you have either imported from a DXF file or a DWG file from someone else, you'll find that it doesn't come in with any of the IRRICAD layouts. It just comes in with the standard AutoCAD or BricsCAD layout. This will also happen if you are converting a standalone design into IRRICAD Link. What we want to be able to do is, of course, not only add your own layouts, we also want to be able to use the IRRICAD scales. So we've added the layouts we wanted, however the scales won't be present. If I look at the viewport here and have a look at the quick properties, you'll find that there's a whole lot of architectural scales there which are not perhaps the ones that we want to use. So there's two things that we can do. One thing is that we can edit the scale list using a scale list edit and removing the ones that we don't want to see, and we can add the ones that we do want to see. So for example, I'm going to add 1 inch equals 200 foot, so one paper unit is 200 drawing units. So now when I tell IRRICAD to prepare the layout, it's going to choose a scale that is closest to what you said you wanted. 1 to 200, so that was the closest that was loaded to what I wanted there. But the other thing that you can do is you can edit the default scale list. In AutoCAD, you can go to Config, User Preferences, Default Scale List, and you can add the ones you want in your scale list. Okay, and that also means that when you run into this situation again, you can very easily load the scales that you want to use. So if we go back to the scale list edit, if we go reset, it's going to load the ones that you've just seen me working on, putting in the scales that I want to use. Now in BricsCAD, the method is to go to the default scale list command and make your changes there. Don't delete the one-to-one, and as you saw in AutoCAD, there were some that it wouldn't let me delete, but most of them can be deleted, and then you can add the required IRRICAD scales. If any of you use metric scales, then there is a complete list in the IRRICAD manual of what you should be putting in for the common scales. And then when you get to the situation, go to the scale list edit. What you've put in, you can reset via this button, which I haven't changed in BricsCAD. Now in AutoCAD, the list lives in the registry, but in older versions of BricsCAD, it's actually a file. In newer versions of BricsCAD, it is a registry file as well. You can share that file with other people if one person in your company has set that up. Are there any questions about using the layouts or making changes to the layouts in Link?
One question is about the date. I think a little while ago I found that the date was different than the date that we use in standalone. And how do you populate the date?
The date appears to be the computer date. If you find that your designs are not updating the fields on the title block, it probably hasn't got any information in it. So let's put some information in. We can see that the information updates quite quickly. Oops, I didn't add a designer name. But if you change the layout or change between the layouts, it should refresh. But yes, the date has always been a little bit different than the rest of the fields. If we change it to the create date, that works a little better.
When I was working on this last week or so, it did seem to be the current date for the day on the computer, but it didn't populate automatically. So I just had to right click it, and there was a menu that I was able to select update field.
Yes, thank you for the reminder of that. Update field is probably the easiest one to use. Are there many users in the class that are using IRRICAD Link?
Sorry, mostly, there are a few, Joe, and mostly on BricsCAD.
One thing I enjoy about BricsCAD is if you don't know where a setting is, you can search for it in the BricsCAD settings. For example, insert units. With AutoCAD, if you don't know, you've got to look somewhere else to find out where it might be. Well, I hope that has been helpful.
One thing, if you could review quickly, is the target shortcut for the default profiles, and maybe if you could zoom in on the property screen so that people can see that.
We're looking at the plain AutoCAD icon. Right-click, Properties. The default profile for AutoCAD is Unnamed Profile in angle brackets. The default for BricsCAD tends to be called Default these days. It used to be called 2D Drafting. But of course, if you've made your own profile in the plain AutoCAD or BricsCAD, then you can set that up instead, as long as it's not something to do with IRRICAD. You won't be able to see it because it's on my other screen, but here's the properties of the IRRICAD icon. Here you can see our profile switch, which says to load IRRICAD profile, and everything to do with the IRRICAD menus and commands and workspaces and things like that.
Thank you again, Joe. Any further questions for Joe on the templates in Link? If you could summarize what are the key steps, things not to forget, Joe.
The most important thing is if you are going to be editing your templates, do it in plain BricsCAD or AutoCAD. And if you have different licenses in your company, edit the templates in AutoCAD, not BricsCAD.
Okay, and there was quite a lot to digest there. So this has been recorded and we'll make it available, so you'll be able to study it in your own time.